This video is about the digital version of Diablo Highway from LearnEngines. Diablo Highway is a forensic science lab activity that has two components. Number one is the digital activity, which we'll be focused on today. And number two is what we call the in-classroom kit, which has all the same lab activities, but is in the real world. You can do the labs actually in the classroom. But for today, we're going to be talking about the digital version of the activity. So Diablo Highway is based on an actual case that occurred in March 1938 on a desert road in southwest Texas. It was the unfortunate case of a double murder of a mother and a daughter, Hazel and Nancy Fromm, as they were traveling across the country in this beautiful luxury Packard. And here you can see kind of a map of the murder scene. So what we at LearnEngines have done is taken the details of that particular crime, and we've created a forensic science lab activity around it. So there are 11 lessons and 9 lab activities in the digital version of Diablo Highway. They include fingerprint, hair analysis, blood typing. There's a tire impression lab, a shoe impression lab, and then there are some advanced labs such as firearms identification. There was a firearm that was involved in this particular crime, and also crime scene mapping. It's important to understand that the digital version of Diablo Highway is basically a website. The students and the teacher would go to learn-engines.com and go to the login page. They sign in, and the first thing they see, at least as a teacher, we're logged in as a teacher right now, is that initial page of their dashboard. You see classes, you see students. It also tells you the available licenses that the school has in their school repository. So let's go look at class. In this case, this particular teacher has set up one class so far and called it the null class. Very easy to set up a class, as you could see. And then the teacher has enrolled 40 students in that class. So you can enroll the students one by one, or occasionally there might be a new student that joins your class after it's already been established. Or you can take the easy way and import your class list by taking an Excel CSV file with first name, last name, student's email address if you want to include that, and just basically dragging and dropping it into this area here, and it will automatically enroll your students. The students, if you select the option to do so, will actually receive via email automatically their login credentials. On this page, there's some really nice instructions about how to do this. I'm not going to go through that in detail right now, but you can certainly get into those details at a later time. There's a nice video that shows you how to do that. And this is all accessible via our help guide, which is, here it is, help.learn-engines.com, and in this case, /Diablo Highway. You can get help from any of our other products, either Murdered Old Fails Who Took Fluffy. This has numerous posts about effective ways to do various activities, such as how to buy Diablo Highway or how to enroll classes and students. It's a help guide if you have any questions about how to actually operate Diablo Highway. Let's go back to the dashboard. And here, in addition to the classes and the students, which we've talked about, and the licenses that are in the repository, you can see these icons here. And these will sort of jump out to that particular activity when your students start to actually engage with it. So we're going to choose Diablo Highway, and it jumps out, as you can see, diablohighway.app.learn-engines.com. The initial page it goes to is the gradebook. So these are all kind of demo students that we've set up, and there's not a lot of actual activity that these, in quotes, students have actually done, but I think you get the idea that all of your students would be listed here. And as they start to go through the activity, you'll see what they got on the quizzes, you'll see what they got on the labs. And if you wanted to see any additional information, sort of drill down to any other information. So Matthew Jacobs here, let's go see why Matthew Jacobs got an 88 on this particular thing. So you can see when they submitted the actual lab. You can reset the lab activity so they have an opportunity to do it again. We're going to go look at the quiz by clicking on quiz, and you'll see that Matthew Jacobs got an 88 because he got 7 out of 8 correct. So you'll see what he answered on question number 1, question number 2, and he got all those right. And then here you see question 6, he got that one wrong. So he had chosen Romano Trotsky as which of the suspects visited the Froms at their hotel, and the correct answer was actually Wolfgang Ebel. But I think you get the idea of sort of the feedback that you're going to get through the gradebook to be able to monitor the progress and performance of your students. One other thing about the gradebook, you can also filter the gradebook columns so that you only see those grades that you want. So, for example, if you wanted to only see, I only want to see what the students have done or achieved through their submissions on hair analysis. I think you get the idea. You can sort of filter that information just by clicking on these toggles. And then when you go to export this data, and you can export it as an Excel CSV by clicking here, you will only export the data that is visible on your gradebook screen at that time. So if you've filtered out some of the activities because you're not currently interested in them, when you go to download the CSV, those would not be included. So you can do the entirety of it, or you can just do a particular activity. The next major tool for teachers is known as the lesson plan. Now, the lesson plan is really fantastic because it enables you to control the pace and the sequence through which your students go through the activity. So, for example, these are all green right now. They've been toggled to green, which means they are all on. They're all enabled for your students to do the activity. So your students here would see this stack, this navigation bar, if you will, just as you see it here, and they would have access to do, as they saw fit, blood typing, lesson quiz lab, hair analysis, lesson quiz lab. If you wanted to pace your students only in the sequence in which you wanted to, for example, let's say you wanted the students to only do blood typing and you don't want them to really go ahead and do the other labs, you would just turn them off as I'm doing here, and then you would save the lesson plan, which I'm not going to do right now. And then what would happen over here is the students would see a lock icon, and it would sort of be grayed out, and they would see that hair analysis lab is potentially available to them, but not currently. And in that case, they would be constrained to doing only the blood typing lab. So we've tried to structure Diablo Highway to be as flexible as possible. A lot of our teachers will use it over the course of an entire semester. And while they're teaching, let's say, blood typing, then they enable the blood typing lab in Diablo Highway, and the students would do just that lab. Then the teacher would sort of go back to, I'll call it conventional teaching, if you will, teach hair analysis, then just turn on the hair analysis lab and have the students do the hair analysis lab. I think you get the idea. So, and it really, for the teacher, it's great because sometimes you have a lot of time to do the activity, perhaps over the entire semester. Other times you may only have a week or so in between other things that you're doing or teaching, and you want to constrain the students to only doing a certain amount of content that fits within the time that you have provided. So the lesson plan enables you to do that. All right, so that's the grade book and the lesson plan in the teacher's account. From here down, these are all the labs that the student will be doing or potentially could do, depending on how you set up your lesson plan. And you, through your teacher account, you can also see all of these lab activities just as the student would do them. This gives you an idea of the amount of labs that are available to do in Diablo Highway. So we have the crime scene, which we'll talk about in a second. There's actually two crime scenes, where the car was found and where the bodies were found. Then there's the story of the crime, which kind of introduces the student to the actual details, the context, if you will, in which the lab activity would take place. This tells the story of Hazel and Nancy Fromm as they were traveling across the country, where they went, what happened, then their car broke down. Tells you a little bit about the victims, their background, the suspects. So there's really good information here. It's an interesting story. It's a fascinating story, frankly. Here's a map that the lead investigator, Sheriff Chris Fox, actually created during the actual investigation. So we were able to get our hands on that and include that into the lesson. So the story of the crime is important for the students to do, regardless of how many labs they do or in which order. Let's look at the labs. So you have the blood typing lab, hair analysis, fingerprint analysis, DNA, shoe impression, tire impression, fiber analysis, firearms identification, and crime scene mapping. So there's plenty to do if you choose to do it all, or there's plenty to choose from if you're only going to do some of the labs. Let's take a look at one of the featured labs, which is firearms identification. So each of the labs has a lesson. I'm going to show you the lesson right now, which teaches the student, in this case, all about firearms identification. There's a lot of graphics. It's very accurate. It's very credible, scientifically true. It's all there. Then there's a quiz, a multiple choice quiz that follows each lesson. The students would look at the questions, obviously, choose their answers. And it's kind of like an open book test, in the sense that they can go back to the lesson if they want and review it and sort of learn up again what the correct answer is. So the students should do well if they take it seriously and engage with it on these quizzes. And then we have the lab. This is the online lab. What's neat about the lab, now in the case of firearms identification, there's actually two aspects to the lab, cartridges and bullets. So I'm going to choose cartridges for now. And the control samples kind of load in automatically. So the students are not responsible for capturing or collecting the control samples. Those are provided to you. So if you click on one of these control samples, this kind of simulates like you're standing on the edge of a desk, and these are the control samples are laid out on the desk for you to work with. And then when you click on it, you bring it up into examination mode. And one of the things that's really neat about Diablo Highway is that all of the control samples and the evidence is in 3D. So these models were very carefully constructed in 3D for the students to manipulate and examine. And you can see some things right away here. So these are breech face marks. They're not quite vertical, complete vertical lines, but you see them going up and down. This is a firing pin mark here in the middle. This is the manufacturer's mark, Tulamo. This is the caliber. You can see this is an ejection pin mark here. You can see this triangular sort of indentation, and that's when it was ejected from the firearm. It makes a mark there. So all these are very significant because not only do the students need to record what these are, and you see what I did here, which is click on the record data icon, and it slid out from the left side here. This is where the student would record their data. I'm going to lock it into position so it doesn't go away just by clicking on that. And in this case, we're looking at Trotsky's TT33. So we're going to go down here. Here's Trotsky's TT33. So we'll take a look at the manufacturer of the cartridge. Clearly, it's Tulamo. That is the manufacturer mark for the Tula arsenal. So I'm going to choose that, and you can see that my answer in green that I've temporarily recorded is listed here. Now what the students will be doing is they're going to be recording all of their answers in all these categories, and when they have a complete lab, they'll submit it by clicking this button. So until they submit it, they can still go back and change their answer. So let's say I go back here and I'm like, oh, you know what? It's not Tula Arsenal, it's Winchester. I can change that before I submit the lab. If the students try to submit an incomplete lab, they get an error message that basically says that your lab is incomplete. Please go back and complete it. You cannot submit an incomplete lab. Now, currently in this lab, we only have the control samples, but had we found cartridge evidence at the crime scene, I'm going to go to the crime scene next, that evidence would sort of slide in to the right of the control samples, and you could do the same investigation that we're doing now on the control and manipulation of the control samples. You can do that with the evidence. So, all right, unlock that, and we'll go to the crime scene, give you a taste of the crime scene. As I had mentioned earlier, there's actually two crime scenes here, one where the car was found and one where the bodies were found. I'm going to go where the car was found just by clicking on it. And this is really neat. It's almost like a video game-like experience. So I'm clicking, holding, and dragging to look around, if you will, and you get a 360 view of the entire crime scene, which is really neat. And to find evidence, you go to these various evidence stations. I'm going to choose this one in the back of the car. And when you get here, your job is to find the evidence. Now, Some of the evidence you can see with your unaided eye. Some of it you need a little help to be able to find. So that help that we've given are a few tools here, such as this toggle crosshair. So this kind of aims what you're looking at. And then we also have this proximity indicator up here. So it's kind of like a hot-cold game you used to play when you were a kid. You know, you're getting hotter, you're getting hotter, you're getting colder, you're getting colder. As you get closer to a piece of evidence, you'll see that this kind of fills up and it changes color. I happen to know that there's a fingerprint on the handle on the back of the trunk there. So as you get close to it, you'll see that it blinks. It's full green now, and that lets you know that you're sort of over a piece of evidence. Now you have to examine it, and you have to capture it. So to do that, you click on this button again. You'll see it says fingerprint on car trunk handle, and now we have a zoomed-in view of that, and we have to do two things in this case. We have to take a picture of the evidence by clicking on the camera icon, and then we're going to actually capture it by clicking on the icon of the duster, and you see a little duster comes out, and we've now found evidence number 29, fingerprint on the car trunk handle. So if we go and look at our evidence drawer by clicking on collected evidence, you'll see that we've now captured 1 out of 29 pieces of evidence at both crime scenes, and we've captured so far one, number 29, fingerprint on the car trunk handle. So I'm going to close that. You can also go inside the car, which is kind of cool. I'm going to click on this. And there's plenty of evidence in here, obviously. The two ladies were going cross country. I spent a lot of time in the car, so we have hair, we have fingerprints. We even have some DNA as well. I happen to know that there's some DNA right on the bottom there. It's actually a cigarette butt. I don't know if you can see that on the floor of the car. We've zoomed into it. We're going to take a picture of that, and then we're going to, in this case, it's a swab. We're swabbing for DNA evidence. We found number 23, cigarette butt on the car floor. Again, I'll go to the evidence drawer, and you'll see number 23, cigarette butt on the car floor. So that gives you a taste of the labs. They're really cool. They're a lot of fun. They're really interesting. You've seen the quiz, you've taken a look at the lesson, and you've taken a look at the grade book and the lesson plan. What's nice about Diablo Highway for the kids is not only is it based on a real story, but it has really fun activities like finding the evidence on location. They learn a lot of science. They're challenged by the labs. They're fully engaged with the material. It compels them to do reading. They're doing this all in a very fun way. It really is truly objective-based learning. And the students are sort of marching their way through the labs to try to, using science, using facts, using evidence, to prove a case as to who they think committed the crime. And they do so in the last lab, which is the Solve the Crime lab. And you choose a report here. They have to choose one of the suspects, Adelanda, Jim Milan, etc. And then they have to write a brief report. It usually turns out to be maybe 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, as to why they chose that particular culprit. And they have to support their conclusion with the evidence and the facts and the case that they've put together. Good news, all the labs are automatically graded by the function. All of the quizzes are automatically graded by the function. So it really relieves the teacher of a lot of the grunt work, if you will, of having to grade all of those submissions. The function basically does it for you. If you're interested in purchasing Diablo Highway, the digital version, there's a number of ways that you can do that. Here's one way to make the purchase, which is from the Learn Engine store, and you go to learn-engines.com. You click on Shop. Here's our 3 products. Diablo Highway, you're going to look at the online activities, Diablo Highway Online Forensics Lab activity, and it's a little calculator here. So the way it works is that the teacher account is free and the student accounts you pay for, and the cost for doing so depends on how many that you buy. So the more student accounts you buy, the less cost it is for each of those accounts. So if I wanted to do, let's say, I have a class of 27 students, that is going to cost at $12.70 per license. That would cost $342.90. That can be purchased with a purchase order, or it can be purchased with a credit card. There's a couple other ways that you can buy our products, our Learn Engines products, Diablo Highway, the digital version, one of which is from Carolina Biological. They carry it on our behalf, so if you have a purchasing relationship with them, you can do so through there. One of our other suppliers is Ward's Natural Science. You can buy Diablo Highway, the digital activity, through them if you have a purchasing relationship with them and you're most comfortable doing that. If you'd like to schedule a personal Screenshare demo where you could be guided through Diablo Highway in even greater detail, simply go to this website, fill out this simple form, select Diablo Highway as what you're interested in, and hit submit. And you can choose the desired date and time for your demo when it's convenient for you. Feel free to reach out to us and ask any questions you want at the learn-engines.com website. There's a contact form there. We're very responsive. We'll get back to you for sure within hours and at the most 1 business day if you have any questions whatsoever. Thank you very much for your attention today. And again, any questions, just feel free to reach out.